anything, uh, I got there are always revisions to the script,
Yes.
and I got some new sides, and Benjamin, it was like it went from what you see in the film down to thank you, just happy to be here, whatever it is. I
Yeah.
love you, man. It was really kind of that. And I
Uh,
was like, oh no.
Welcome to episode number 17. I am your host, Benjamin Vomastic, and we are joined today by Larry Joe Campbell. You probably recognize Larry from his role of Andy on According to Jim. You might also recognize him from the movies All Pass or Wedding Crashers. And he's also been on television shows including The Orville and Goosebumps, to name a few. How are we doing today, Larry?
Hey, doing really well. I'm great. Thank you for having me. Glad to be
Yeah,
here.
thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, yeah, my pleasure.
So, jumping into things, what got you into acting and why are you passionate about acting?
Well, I would say that a I come from a big family, and I have three older brothers. They're a lot older than I am, and they all left the house. And I found myself really kind of as a latchkey kid. I was on my own quite a bit after
Hmm.
school, and I lived a long way from school. I grew up I was born in Pontiac, Michigan, but I grew up in Cadillac up north,
Okay, yeah.
and I went to a small school, Pine River High School. I think my graduating class was 92. And I lived a good hour bus ride, over an hour, even though it's probably 15, 20 miles to school, um, because of all the stops. And when I would
Yeah.
get home, my mom was working. My dad wasn't around much. So that left a lot of time to entertain myself. So I think the root of how I got into this was really just playing alone, using my
Uh-huh.
imagination. Obviously it's well before any sort of social media or smartphones, and I think for a lot of us, I'm 54, you go out in the woods, or if you're in the city, you go out in the neighborhood. But for me, it was the woods, and you play, and you had toys, so I was sitting there putting on plays with my Star Wars figures, and my brothers and I, when they were home, we were always playing. So war, or run around, slow mo football, anything, usually violent. Uh, but we just we made games out of everything, and even they're 10 years older than I am, and more so. And when we get together, we're still kids at play. We have games that we just made up our own rules to. So I think that, and then when my one of my brothers, Gary, came back home, we we would get, like, I was always called weird in school. Like, no,
Hmm.
Larry, you're so weird. And again, so I was like kind of that electron. I was never really part of a nucleus ever. And so when my brother would come back, it might be homecoming dance, but I was too shy to ask someone out. So we would rent Three Stooges and eat pizza. And so
Uh-huh.
as I'm getting older, I'm getting to see all of this comedy, this great comedy.
Yeah.
Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, like the old stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that lent itself to being physical comedy.
Mhm.
And I think also you run into experiences, right? You have experiences, I should say. I remember going off to a camp in the summer, and and here I am, insecure about my body type. My mom always bought me husky pants from Kmart, and we're at this pool at Alma College,
Mhm.
and everyone, in my opinion, I'm like 13, 14 years old. They look great, but and
Mhm.
here's me, and I see this platform diving board. I'd never seen anything like it, being from the woods, and I was like, I'm gonna jump it. And I jumped off it, no big deal. Other people were too. But I had the bright idea of I would flip off of it.
Mhm.
So I did that, and I'm telling you, Benjamin, I smacked. I boom. I
Ooh.
smacked my belly so hard from way up. And
Yeah,
I
the high
remember
dive. Yeah.
being in the pool under the water crying. I was
No.
crying. I was like, oh, don't show it. Don't show it. I'm under. I'm coming back up. I'm coming back up. And I'm up. And everyone is laughing and applauding. And comedy, it's true. Comedy comes from pain. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, let me go do that again.
Yeah.
So that's really, the start came. There was never a drama club when I was
Oh,
growing
really?
up. We
Okay.
had one my senior year at
Uh
Pine
huh.
River.
Yeah.
God bless Mrs. Van Dries for wanting to put on a show. We put on Rest Assured. It was about an old Italian butcher who lost his wife, and she comes back to visit him as a ghost. Very community theater type of play,
Hmm.
very safe, very fun, and uh, everything I said had an A after it. And you learn comedy by failing. So
Hmm.
pain and failure will make things funny
Hmm.
eventually.
Hmm. And then you went off to Central Michigan was that for theater?
Yeah, well, when I went to Central, I thought I didn't know what I wanted to do, and
Hmm.
I remember at orientation being there, and I thought, am I gonna go into sports medicine? Because I always loved sort of that idea of maybe being a doctor or something, but
Hmm.
I didn't have the smarts for it. And I thought maybe I'll go into pre-law, and be a
Hmm.
lawyer. And I did not want to read. It was always hard for me to read when I was younger. Um, from self-diagnosed now, later looking back, it's like, oh, there's some ADHD issues going on, and just had a hard time focusing, or I would dive too much into the what I read, and I would act out the dialogue. And this is well before ever wanting to pursue acting or anything. It's just
Hmm.
how my brain functioned. So I didn't want to read so much. And little did I know I had no idea how many scripts I'd wind up reading going into acting. But
Hmm.
and I actually developed such a love for reading later on in life. But I didn't know. So I just prayed about it, and
Hmm.
I just plunged right in, and I wound up taking 3 theater classes and a film class, a film appreciation, because
Hmm.
Central didn't really have, they didn't have a film department, but
Right.
that was through the broadcasting department there, and then that's all she wrote, and just dove right into it.
Right on. It's a beautiful story.
Well, Central was the foundation for everything that that's come my way. That I had some great well builders there.
Yep.
Belushi tells he tells the analogy of when you drink from the well of success, remember the well builders, remember those who
Hmm.
built the well, right?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And I had some great mentors there, and it's just such a great place to you cannot, at least when I was there. I think it's
Hmm.
obviously it's changed. I'm an old man, but um you got the chance to do everything. You had to do
Hmm.
everything. You had to have a respect for the staging of things, the build, the costumes, the makeup. You had to
Hmm.
have an appreciation and a respect for all of it. You couldn't just myopically focus on acting or directing per
Hmm.
se. I got to direct Harold Pinter in the side theater, the theater on the side at Central. I got to be in Reader's Theater productions with Jill Taft Kaufman, and just making plays out of literature. And we got to
Hmm.
travel that to San Francisco. I'd barely been out of the state of Michigan, so there
Oh,
was a
wow. Yeah.
lot of great stuff from Central, and it got me my professional start in acting because their summer theater is a professional summer theater program. So I did that 2 summers, people say, when did you, start your career as an actor? I credit it, and I go summer of 1991, 33
Yeah.
years ago, because I got paid to act. And a
That's
lot of people
awesome.
don't when they're in college.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that had a profound effect on me because that was in repertory. And we had to put up a different show each night, and we're traveling the show. So
Uh-huh.
it was all hands on deck. That had such an effect on me. I started an endowment at Central, the summer theater endowment. And
Oh, wow.
so I want that to last forever. I want there to be funds there, and I'm always
Yeah.
asking people to donate to it because I
That's
want it
so
around forever.
cool.
It's really
Yeah.
beneficial.
Yeah, I love to hear people giving back like that. That's really neat. Yeah, so then when does your role as Andy, according to Jim, come into play? How did you land this role, and how did it change the trajectory of your career?
Well, I got to move out to L.A. I was at Second City. There was one in Detroit.
Oh,
The
there
famed,
was. I know the one in
legendary.
Chicago. I didn't realize there was one in Detroit.
Yeah, the one in Chicago is celebrating another anniversary here. It's iconic, and the people who came out of that just legendary. And then they had one in Toronto. Well, then they tried different places: Detroit, Cleveland, Vegas.
Hmm.
They recently opened one in New York. Well, they had one in Detroit for a little over 10 years, I believe, 10, 12 years.
Hmm.
And I got to be there right in the heyday of it. And from 96 to 99.
Hmm.
I left January 99, so just barely, not quite
Hmm.
3 years. And that's where I tell people I got my bachelor's at Central Michigan. I got my master's at Wayne State, but I got
Hmm.
my doctorate at Second City.
Yeah.
And so when we got the chance, a couple of us, to move out to LA because of Bob Saget, God rest his soul.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he and Dave Coulier came to watch some improv. They wanted to join the set. And
Yeah.
the first night they were there, it was too loud. Darren McCarty had his band rocking. And we didn't do an improv set. You always do an improv set at the end of a
Uh-huh.
Second City show. We said, if you come back, we'll do it. Right.
Yeah.
Thank God that happened. Dave Coulier couldn't make it, but Bob did, and he
Yeah.
improvised with us. And they told their manager, and the manager came out, signed a couple of us, and we made that move. Me and my
That's
friend Eric
cool.
Black, who is unfortunately no longer with us, but we were in his black Saturn driving across the country, and I was so fortunate that to have that representation.
Yeah.
We put on a two-man show, and we in a place called the HBO Workspace in Hollywood,
Uh-huh.
and we got our agent that way. So now we have a manager and an agent,
Yeah.
and it was a couple auditions in. So it'd been like February of '99. I landed a role on a show that wow, it took on so many variations. They fired cast members. They gave us a holding deal to wait. It did not. We didn't even shoot the pilot that year. And at that
Wow.
point, it was called People Who Fear People. They in the fall we filmed it for because they fired the actor who was originally in People Who Fear People, and that was February '99, right?
Uh-huh.
And and this is, for anyone wanting to do this stuff, if you get a role, you gotta sell it. It's like theater. And I remember sitting there, I was just so happy. John Cryer's a part of this. He was so funny. We're playing best friends.
Hmm.
um and the lead, though, when we have this network read, you
Hmm.
can barely hear him.
Mm.
And we're trying to sell comedy, right? We're trying to see if we got some laughs for this thing
Yeah.
and get this thing made. And I don't know what's going on. This is my very first gig, really.
Yeah.
um and so I go back to my dressing room on the Paramount lot, and the soundstage. We're waiting. I wait 2 hours to rehearse. When they call us out to rehearse, they say we can't rehearse. We've let go of the lead actor.
Wow.
I didn't know that was a thing. Your dream comes true, and you get a pilot, and
Yeah.
then you're let go, and it happens all the time. So we had to wait till the fall, and they recast, and David Krumholtz was now a part of it. He's brilliant. He's so good. But yet, when we filmed it, they didn't like some things, and so we filmed some of the replay. They wound up letting go a couple more actors. Suddenly Paget Brewster is on board, and she's incredible. And it was the following spring we make this, and it gets picked up by ABC, and the fall of 2000 we're on air as The Trouble with Normal. I had such a great time. Victor Fresco developed that and created it, and he was the showrunner. It was the time of my life. And we filmed 13 episodes, but only 5 aired because of low ratings.
Oh.
But I got a holding deal out of it. I'm taking so long to explain how I got According to Jim. But
this is all good
I got
stuff.
a holding deal through ABC for it. And that meant I could only audition for their stuff. That was cool because, I got a little bit of money now. When I moved out to LA, while I'm auditioning to make ends meet, I worked at a temp agency, like right in the office of the temp agency, filing. I was filing stuff, and they'd let me go on audition. So now I have money. I have a little bit of money, so I can just audition. And I got a Jeffrey Tambor pilot called Man in the Kitchen, and I auditioned. Before I got that, I auditioned for According to Jim, and they said no. So Sam Cedar wound up being cast as Andy originally, and he didn't like being on the show, and it wasn't really quite fit. He looks totally different than I do. He's beautiful. He's handsome, fit. And so they reconsidered. They were like, let's see Larry again. And so during the recasting of According to Jim, because Man in the Kitchen didn't go anywhere, I got it. And Jim, I read with Belushi at the network test. So did the other actor. And when they said you got it, I think I was on my way home, but they're saying, no, we're going pretty much into rehearsal. It was now middle of the summer. And you got to go to someplace, West LA, and get pictures taken with the cast, publicity stills taken. So I get to meet Courtney and Kimberly and the girls. It was really great. The very first pictures of According to Jim, I have on a gray sweater, the stills from it, the promotional stuff. And there's a hole right here in the sweater because it's my sweater.
Yeah.
I got the gig and I drove over there and I'm wearing my clothes.
Yeah.
So, and then, 8 seasons later, 182 episodes in, and changed the whole trajectory of my career.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, I remember growing up back when we had cable television. I remember that was one of the big shows, According to Jim, King of Queens. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's now on Amazon Prime again, because people keep asking, where can I find this? Because that's back in the day when it was syndicated. That syndication was still a big deal because you can't, there was no streaming.
Yeah.
And then once syndication ends, because it always it's no longer trendy. Big Bang Theory started their syndication, and all the Mom and all these other great shows. There's no room for the old shows. And then you hope you get on like TV Land, or there's a network called Laugh, right? But all that runs its course. So I'm happy that it's found a home streaming, because you watch it again. Jim and I will text each other and go, man, wasn't that a fun scene? Because to be honest with you, I have 5 kids. They're all adults now. My youngest is a freshman in college. But there are 182 episodes. There are times where I'm looking back and I'll see some people post on Instagram or something
Mhm.
a clip, and I go, what is that from? I don't remember that. Oh, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's so great to rediscover it.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're still in contact with Jim.
Oh yeah, Jim and I always. We perform together. He's got Jim
Oh,
Belushi and the
okay.
Board of Comedy, and we
Yeah,
do live shows together. It's
that's awesome.
not as often as we would like because
Uh huh.
people are busy, but
Yeah.
we performed that with Joshua Funk and Megan Grano. Josh and I worked at Second City in Detroit.
Mhm.
Megan was at Second City in Chicago, but she's from Grosse Pointe,
Okay. Yeah.
and so we've just all kept really close and tight. I think we got some shows on the East Coast sometime in January, so
Nice.
that it's really great. And plus we did Growing Belushi together, about his cannabis farm. So we did that. I think uh, 2022 was our last season of that.
Uh huh.
So yeah, no, I any chance I get to hang around Jim, I take it.
That's
And
awesome. Yeah, that's really cool to hear.
yeah, I just part of a text thread with Courtney, Kimberly, Jim, and some of the writers,
Hmm.
and we all had birthdays recently, Kimberly and Courtney and myself, and then it's always trying to, when can we get together? And they're just so successful and busy, it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I gotta ask. I mean, I'm sure you see the poster behind me. My favorite
Yeah,
movie of all time, Wedding Crashers. What do you
it's
remember
great.
from the sets of Wedding Crashers and also Hall Pass? I recently rewatched. That's another really fun one.
Yeah, yeah. Wedding Crashers. When I got to audition for that, it was that monologue that you see in the
Yeah.
film,
Right. Yeah.
and it was with the casting director, and quite often, for people who don't know, it's filmed the before the pandemic. You would go
Hmm.
into you drive to a place, and a casting director would rent it out, at least an office space,
Hmm.
and you go into a room, and you're sitting with the other actors who are going to go in, and one by one you kind of shuffle through, and oftentimes it's just put on tape for the director and producers to see later,
Yeah. Uh huh.
right? And if you're fortunate, you get to be in the room with the director or with a producer. That's cool
Yeah.
too. But a lot of times, and for the best man role, it was with the casting director.
Hmm.
And that was passed along. Obviously, since the pandemic, a lot of it you just film on your own now. It'd be like
Hmm.
this, really,
Yeah.
and then I submit it electronically. So uh, you don't even get any sort of direction. You got to kind of hope
Right.
you're kind of nailing what you want to nail, and you
Yeah.
send it in. Makes it convenient because you're not driving all over LA, but at the
Hmm.
same time, you don't get that kind of in the room feel,
Yeah.
that, yeah, that human connection. But it is
Right.
what it is. So when I auditioned for Wedding Crashers, it was that, and I found out I got it. And leading up, there were going to be a couple days in LA to shoot,
Hmm.
where they were using a church in LA, and
Hmm.
that's where I'm walking Rachel McAdams down the aisle
Hmm.
and stuff,
Yeah.
and I didn't say anything. My only scene where I'm saying something is the toast.
Yeah.
So that we did a couple of that, but leading up to that, um, before I shot anything, I got, there are always revisions to the script,
Yes.
and I got some new sides, and Benjamin, it was like it went from what you see in the film down to thank you, just happy to be here, whatever it is. Or, I
Yeah.
love you, man. It was really kind of that.
Uh
And I
huh.
was like, oh no, it was so fun. This toast, so fun. And
Yeah.
I called the agent that sent me out on the film, and I was like, can we please talk to David? David
Mhm.
Dobkin, the director.
Yeah.
Can we just ask? Can he shorten it in editing if it's not what he likes? Like, can I
Yeah.
please do what I auditioned? And God bless him, he let me. And it was the whole speech, and it lived. The whole speech lived.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's fascinating. I mean, what is it? Is it any more than 30 seconds? I don't
Mhm.
know. But I get a lot of people who are like, "Hey, you were the best man in Wedding
Yeah. That's
Crashers."
awesome.
And it always helps because it's such a great film, right?
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
good.
And with so much talent. Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
Yeah. Lot of talent in that film. And everyone was just so lovely. Um and it was I didn't have a lot of interaction because the when I shot my scene, it was on location in
Mhm.
Maryland, and I did it, and that was kind of it, right?
Yeah.
But I remember Rachel being really sweet. Jane Seymour came up to me; she's lovely, and Vince is cool as hell.
Oh, I love
And
him.
yeah, and I didn't get any interaction with Owen in that film. It wasn't until Hall passed that
Right.
I got to work with him because I didn't have any scenes with him in Wedding Crashers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave seems really cool to work with. I just a short anecdote. I read the screenplay for Wedding Crashers, and I was surprised at how much is not in the screenplay, at least the one I read, that is actually in the movie. Seems
Mm.
like there was a lot of improv going on.
I imagine, Vince has a cadence and a way of speaking that has made him so many people just love him and his comedy, right?
Yes.
And I don't know if and I have no idea how it all came about, but
Right,
if
okay.
although I will tell you this, and it's something I'll have to ask Bob Fisher because he
Uh-huh.
co-wrote. Bob Fisher was a
Yeah.
co-writer on Wedding Crashers.
Mhm.
He's also one of the creators on Animal Control, and I have a
Mhm.
recurring role on that.
Mhm.
So Bob is one of those guys. I've worked with Bob about 4 different times. I worked with Bob on Trouble with Normal, and then I worked with him on a pilot with Cedric the Entertainer. So he's one of those people I've worked with multiple times. So I'll have to ask him because I don't know how you capture Vince Vaughn's cadence on paper, right? So did he
Yeah.
write that and then Vince got cast? Did he know Vince was going to be a part of? Was he attached
Yeah.
before? I have no idea. But so I can imagine that you have this script and then what you see on the film is different.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Vince is
Yeah.
a very special guy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. His latest series, Bad Monkey.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can really see where they wrote to his style because he's very specific and he has a comment for everyone else's line of dialogue. It's just really I love watching him.
I'll have to check that out. I honestly have not seen. I'm familiar. I have not seen that. I'll have
Ye-
to. I'll have to check that out.
There's a sarcasm and a playfulness, a facetiousness in the most serious moments, even from him, and just in his style. It's lovely.
Yeah. I hope everyone is enjoying this podcast. I just wanted to jump in real quick and say if you love comedy movies and miss the R-rated comedy movies of the 2000s, I currently have a comedy movie in post-production that I wrote, directed, and produced titled Hometown Summer. The movie is very much in vein of the 2000s-style R-rated comedies and follows the story of three childhood best friends whose plan to attend the same college is thrown for a whirl in a summer filled with drugs, sex, and bad business decisions. The movie is set for release in 2025, and you can follow the movie's progress on Instagram by following @Wolverines Productions, by signing up for our email list at hometownsummer.com, or by subscribing to this YouTube channel. All of these relevant links will be posted in the description along with the pinned comment. I hope you enjoy the rest of this podcast episode. And then Hall Pass. Your
Yeah,
role was a little bit
yeah.
larger in that one.
It was a dream come true to get to work with the Fairley brothers. You know,
Yeah,
I was such a fan of Something About Mary and
I
Dumb
love
and
that one.
Dumber.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
They did Heartbreak Kid too, didn't they?
yes, yeah,
I
and
really
it's
liked that one.
just classic comedies, you know. And there was
Yeah,
a time, and this is why I really loved Wedding Crashers. There was a
yeah,
time where you know, you got your 80s kind of old school comedies
yeah.
that you know, you probably watch them today and they're, you know, some don't hold up in
Mhm.
terms of what you can say or who should be saying it, right? You
Yeah.
know, Airplane has a little bit of that, but golly, is it funny? You
Oh
know,
yeah.
it's now like, oh, okay, there's some inappropriate stuff, but it is
Yeah.
funny, right?
Yeah, it is. It's very fun.
And you have all these comedies that really walk the line and then sometimes crossed it, and
Yeah.
it's just whether, you know, it's your taste. Comedy
Yeah.
is also in the eye of the beholder.
Right.
um but then it felt like it got safe, and you
Yep.
could,
Oh, it
and there were
drives me
no
nuts.
rated R
Yeah.
comedies out there
Yeah.
in the 90s except the Fairley brothers. And then when Wedding Crashers came about, you were like, okay, we can have fun with comedy again,
Yeah.
right? And but the Fairley brothers have always stuck with their guns and by their guns, and they put out what they want to put out, and I was so grateful to get to be a part of that.
Yeah.
um and then you add Jason Sudeikis. Is I think he's really really brilliant and
Mhm.
talented. um and of course Owen. You know, the movie got made because Owen's in it, really.
Mhm.
And they really were a good partnership in that. But when you also add like Stephen Merchant, right, and JB Smoove,
Mhm.
one of my very first pilots in LA, JB and I were in it together, right? You know,
Okay.
and then you don't see each other until
Yeah.
however many 15 years later.
Yeah.
It was great. They're so good. And
Yeah.
they're just, again, the film is loaded with great talent.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Do you have any funny stories from the set?
Well, I do recall on the one thing that I'll say is I was really in my head being there. It's really
Yeah.
intimidating because this came off the heels. This isn't funny, but if anyone's out there kind of searching and struggling, this came off the heels a little bit of According to Jim. Now, when According to Jim ended, um I started to spin. You know, I have, when it's done, it goes off the air May of '09.
Uh huh.
That means I have a daughter, my oldest, who's about to turn 9,
Uh
and
huh.
then you go right on down. And then so that means I have a son who's 7 and twins that are 5, and my youngest is 3 at the time. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how am I gonna keep the family going, right? I felt an enormous amount. I put a lot of pressure on myself to get back out there.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I
and
can
I got to do
imagine.
some great projects right after According to Jim. I had a nice little arc on Weeds that was a lot of fun. And
Uh huh.
um you know, and I was in Killers with Ashton Kutcher, and had a little role in that. So there were things happening, but in my mind I expected it to keep just trending upward. If I'm a
Yeah.
right, if I'm a regular, if I'm a supporting regular on a series, the next series I'll be the lead. It'll be my show.
Yeah.
That's not how things work.
Mhm.
It's not how they work in Hollywood. It's not how they work in life. You know, it's this. And heck, it could just be this for a while and then go back. It just
Mhm.
varies. And so I'm getting these roles, and you kind of just keep building again, however that means. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that I did is I got in my own way on that show a little bit because I wanted it to be a success. So I got other things as well,
Mhm.
instead of just taking the piece of art as it is, the job that you have, and
Mhm.
making it the best you can make it, and then going, great, we did that, and then moving on to the next.
Mhm.
I was really in my head about needing it to lead to something else. And so when you do that, you make it too precious. And then now I'm anxious on the set because I better not screw up, because then it won't,
Yeah.
right? And now, and you can't be funny that way. And so I wasn't as present as I wish I had been, right? And so but that all being said, I had a great time on there as much as I could at the
Yeah.
time. And one lovely story, Richard Jenkins, who's in it. Of course, he was in Step Brothers. He's been in everything, hundreds of things.
Yeah.
Um, and Richard Jenkins sensed this, and I didn't know him before this.
Yeah.
And I told him, I'm filled with anxiety right now. And he said, you
Yeah.
probably don't think you'll ever work again, right? And I said, yes, that's it. And he said, we all feel that way. You'll be fine. You'll get something else. And it was just so lovely for him to take that time.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's
It's
such a
just,
wonderful moment. Yeah. I can
yeah,
imagine how it
yeah.
made you feel.
It was really, really great. But I will tell you, we had this is kind of a funny thing. Stephen Merchant I think he's brilliant, and
Yeah.
he's so smart, and he in comedy, there are a lot of rules in comedy,
Uh-huh.
and he just like improvisation, there are a lot of rules, and when you've been doing it for a number of years, the rules just become, you don't even think about them
Mhm.
anymore. But when you're learning it, you should probably play by the rules. That's
Right.
really great for improvisers.
Mhm.
And Steven, he was always calculating. What if this happened? If I right, and he just made everything work. And he's tall and lanky. And he's got
Mm-hmm.
those
Yeah.
eyes, and he's English. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just funny.
Yeah.
And he's in this, and we have the golf scene. By the
That's a
way,
great
we're
scene.
all wearing these like hard red contact lenses, and the whole eye has to look like we've been smoking weed,
Right. Yeah.
because we also have to act so no one is high during it,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No blow before show is the old adage. And so we put in these contacts, and I wear contacts, and these were hard to wear. And so we have those in there, and we're shooting all day at the golf course, and finally when we're at the spot where I do what I do, my character does what he does in the
Yeah.
bunker.
Yeah.
And I remember that now we did that, we shot that, and then I remember we have, of course we have to jump on the cart
Yeah.
and get away.
Yeah.
And what I remember is that the take before us jumping on there, Steven's like, I wonder if somehow my pants, something happens because I'm trying to, right, and he's calculating.
Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't that. It was falling off, because there'd be no reason for him to lose his pants. It was
Uh.
about falling off.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. And it would have been hilarious had he fell off. Well, I have to run from the bunker, and my shorts are already down, right?
Yeah.
And we're running, and I have to pull them up.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to coordinate, right? There's some choreography going on. And I'm pulling up my shorts, and I'm grabbing hold of the cart. Well, I slip off. And that was going to be his bit. And I didn't, it was purely accidental. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
steal his bit, but
Yeah.
he was going to slip off and then struggle to get on, which of
Yeah.
course would be funny because he's so tall. We look like Mutt and Jeff.
Yeah.
I'm short and wide, and he's tall and lanky, but I did slip because I'm trying to keep my shorts up. I
Yeah.
can't button them in time because they put like a more powerful engine in the golf cart, so it could take all four of us up this trail.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wound up stealing his bit, and I had no intention of doing it. He was gracious, though. I
Yeah.
said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you were going to do that. Ah, no, it's all right. He doesn't sound like that. That's an awful accent.
Yeah. No, that is a funny story for sure. Um, I do want to ask just quickly about you see my TED 2 poster. Seth MacFarlane, probably my favorite writer of all time, one of my biggest influences. What was it like collaborating with him on the Orville?
Well, I there again, I was just grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah,
He he is he's brilliant, and I know I've said that word for a lot of people here, but
we've been talking about a lot of brilliant people.
yeah, and maybe when I say brilliant, I mean talented. But
Uh,
with Seth, it's not hyperbole. Like he's a genius.
yeah,
He's full on Mensa, right? And what he can create and put together is, well, it's really out of my scope and realm. Um, but to think of what he's created in the animation world,
yeah,
and then he goes ahead and creates an entirely new world. Like creatively, he literally creates a new
right,
world
yeah,
with the Orville,
yeah,
right? He's also has a beautiful voice and he's a wonderful musician, right? The
yep,
guy, it's really extraordinary. And then he's very gracious.
that's awesome.
He's in, and I, because I remember there was we have that where the ship gets hit in that season, and
Mhm,
I'm running around right as the chief engineer, and I'm trying to fix stuff on the fly, and I
mhm,
got a lot of dialogue, and I remember I couldn't get through it. Like I would get through most of it, and then we'd do
yeah,
another take, and I would get through a little bit of it. And now you're in your head about it because I'm
oh yeah,
someone, and again, it probably goes back to that anxiety. I'm someone who really wants to nail it. Like, oh,
yeah,
I did good, didn't I? And and so I put a lot of pressure on myself to nail it. And so when you get into 4 or 5 takes when we're redoing it because of you, I was just felt so bad. But he was so
yeah,
gracious. He's like, listen, we already have it. We have it in bits and pieces, and we're
yeah,
gonna edit it together. Like we're good.
yeah,
And it's that calming dad moment where this is his baby. The Orville's his baby,
yeah.
and he's like, "You're all right," It's like, oh, so he's so gracious as well. It was. I wish I could have gotten back on that for more
Mhm,
seasons. I was always hoping. What is funny about that is I got that I got on the show, right, and I'm not a series regular, but I know going into it it's going to recur and there are going to be multiple episodes,
yeah,
and I'm but as an actor you're like, ooh, maybe they'll like me and they'll just keep writing me, and you
yeah,
hear those stories. Eventually I'll be a regular, right?
yeah.
And you shouldn't think that way because those expectations really hurt when it doesn't happen. Um, but I remember being in in a costume fitting, and the
Mhm.
costume designer on the show right away. Right away. It's like the first fitting. He goes, "Now, are you the one who leaves towards the end of the season and never comes back?" And I was crushed. I was like,
That's
"Oh,
brutal.
I don't, a lot of these type of shows anymore. You're not privy to those scripts,
Mhm,
those future scripts. I mean, they don't want. It's a lot of confidentiality and stuff, right?
mhm,
They don't
yeah,
want stories out there. But obviously, people working on the show, department heads, they got to know the arc and what's happening. And I was like, oh, I
right.
don't know. I haven't read those scripts. And he must have seen my face because he goes, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. He wasn't wrong.
Wow.
He was. Jay Lee took
Oof.
over as chief engineer, and I was out.
That's really cool to hear that he's a really good guy, gracious on set.
Oh, I love him. I love him.
Getting into advice you would give actors, you're a very funny person. especially on
Oh,
screen. I mean, you get a lot of laughs. You clearly know what you're doing. You have the it factor when it comes to comedy. What advice would you give to an actor trying to get more laughs on screen or with comedic timing?
when I was at Second City in Detroit, first starting out, um, uh, I was green. I was not an improviser,
Hmm.
and really did not know that world at all. And to think we were going to create shows just originally and organically from
Yeah,
what we did on stage
yeah.
was all new to me. And I remember Lynn O'Kearse, God rest her soul. She's the executive producer of the one in Detroit. She sat me
Hmm.
down in her office and she told me 90% of what you do, 90, is going
Hmm.
to fail. It's going to
Hmm.
fail.
Yeah.
And it's that 10% that you might find some gold in that 10%. And that's the truth. There's a lot of failure in what we do. And we live in a time where it seems as though we're not supposed to fail, which is illogical, right? It just seems
Right.
with social media and all the influencers, you don't see their bad days. You don't see where a product doesn't work.
Hmm.
Anything we see, it not only works very well, but with minimal effort.
Hmm.
And that's the opposite of not only comedy, but this whole industry in general. It's a heck of a lot of work, and it's a lot of failure.
Hmm.
And so it's really, I think, consistency and a thick skin that develops from knowing that you have to keep going.
Hmm.
You have to keep trying it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of rejection.
Hmm.
And if you don't like rejection, I don't like rejection. But if you think about it, and I coach football, and so I
Hmm.
tell the guys, like, it is 30% good, and they're so used to in their academic lives that their immediate reaction is no, that's not good,
Hmm.
right? 30% gets you in the Hall of Fame in baseball. Like,
Hmm.
that's a
Yeah. No
great
kidding.
batting average
Right. Yeah.
because you're meant to. It's not supposed to be successful.
Yeah.
That's hard hitting a fastball.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so it's the same in life. Like, we're operating at really it's an unrealistic expectation we're putting on this younger group,
Hmm.
where you only get in college if you have straight A. Like, people have these weighted grade point averages of 4.5. What is that? That
Yeah.
doesn't even mean anything to me.
Right. Yeah.
On a 0 to 4 is the scale, and
Yeah.
you're rejecting people. My son graduated. My older son graduated with a weighted 4.5 grade point average. And he got into a great school.
Yeah.
Uh, and he played football there in a D3 school, Carleton, it's called in Minnesota. He got in. It's a great school, but there
Nice.
were
Nice.
other schools that said no,
Uh huh.
because there's so many other people with 4.5. Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything anymore,
Hmm.
and so, especially now when you get to comedy, and comedy to me is, and for a lot of people who like comedy and study it,
Hmm.
it's deeper. It's the next level to the serious stuff. I think a lot of times people reverse that and think, oh, you're funny, but can you do the drama, the dramatic stuff?
Hmm.
No, we've all studied the drama. I got my start with plays and then
Right.
classical and the tragedies and Shakespeare and Moliere and then the Sam Shepard's and the guttural Lanford Wilson, those great Americana plays. And then, to me, comedy is that next level of that.
Hmm.
So, and to think that when you do that, 10% that Lynn said, that's not even 30%. I look
Yeah.
at the amount of auditions that I've been on versus
Hmm.
what I've gotten.
Yeah.
And that's like in the low single digits.
Hmm.
There's rejection and failure everywhere. And you can probably make that a funny story if you're willing to expose the pain of it all. Because
Yeah.
pain's funny. It's just funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a big one. And I've been there. I go there a lot. I want the very first thing that I do to be great.
Yeah.
And it just so rarely is. And it's also, you're doing yourself a disservice not to go back in and mine it for all you can.
Mm-hmm.
To go back in and see if there's even more there. Because no
Mm-hmm.
matter what you do, Jim and I talk about this a lot. You're going to always have the rewind when you're done with a project.
Mm-hmm.
And that rewind is you're on your way home going, I should have done,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I would have, invariably, you do it.
Yeah.
So that's a big chunk. You just got to be willing to fail, and you got to get that tough skin about being rejected. And
Yeah.
then also, I was talking about like how Steven would calculate, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important to watch and observe and
Mm-hmm.
absorb all the comedy from years and years ago. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I Love Lucy is fantastic. And she was such a she was so ahead of her time. We have 4 cameras now for comedy, for multicam comedies
Yeah.
because of her. It was always just the A, B, and C camera. She
Mm-hmm.
added the X,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it works out great, especially because I got to direct, according to Jim. You have a master, say, on B getting the whole scene. You have
Mm-hmm.
C getting your 2 shot. Even this is especially great on 2-person scenes. And then you have your overs from one actor to the other. And in comedy, found out quickly, like watch those sitcom comedies. You're going to see a piece of someone acting across from someone else because it connects it. Wherein, the more serious stuff, you might get this more close up and it's just them and it's their reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
But comedy it's relationships and it's character. It's who you are and what's going on between the two of us right now. With anything, I mean, that's what makes it worth watching, is the human connectivity and how we change or how we react to one another,
Yeah.
right? And so I would say watch all of it. Watch even the stuff that you don't think is funny.
Mm-hmm.
You'll at least be able to go, I don't find that funny because of this,
Yeah.
right? Or and then stuff that you think is funny, you start wondering why. Like, there are rules,
Yeah.
like that we've been talking about. The rule of odds. 3 is funny. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just funny. And 5 is funny. Sometimes 4 is funny because it goes 3, you say, and I say, and you say, ha ha ha. And then I say, oh, but it's really basically because it's a new 1. That's odd, and you can overthink it and overanalyze it. And that's what I meant with improvisation.
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to ask questions in improv. You're supposed to know the person for at least 6 months, right? Those are important rules, and you should know those rules, and you should really think about those rules when you're first starting, because then once you keep doing it, you're not even thinking about those rules anymore. But I don't want to watch a scene between you and someone else where you're getting to know one another throughout the scene.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know where you have an investment with one another and, it's hitting the fan. We have an issue here. I want to see that conflict. That's going to be fun, right? Now, that's not to say that a scene where you don't know someone, a customer service scene, you're not going to really know someone.
Right, yeah.
And those can be funny. When Steve Martin hits the rental desk, right? They didn't know each other when he wants his car back. And the F-bombs made it a rated R film. But, that's a customer service scene. Obviously, they're not going to know each other, and it can still be hysterical.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for the most part, we got to know each other. But, I'm getting off on all the rules of comedy. What I'm saying is study it. Dive in.
Yeah.
It's the only way you're ever going to see if you have a passion for it.
Yeah.
Because if you just dip your toes, you're not going to. I just don't think you're ever going to be the success that you hope for if you don't jump in. And obviously, don't do it for the results of it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it for the accolades, or because those rarely come.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, there's a lot of rejection. You know,
Yeah.
I wrote a book recently, and the most fun that I had with it was just writing it, was living these and exploring the lives of these characters in the book,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
not wondering it's you can get caught up going, oh, will it get published? Oh, will
Yeah.
people enjoy it? But that's all result oriented, and you can't do that when you're in the midst of creation.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. I love it. And that's a perfect segue into the last question before we get into the two questions I ask all my guests. I was going to ask about your book. Could you tell us about it?
Oh yeah, it's the book's called Remember That One Time. And you could say it's semi-autobiographical in nature
Okay.
because it's about an aging out of work actor.
Yeah.
But it is fiction because
Mm-hmm.
he's been married to his wife a long time and she's recently left him. My wife and I are doing just fine. So
Oh, great.
27 years with my wife Peggy, and she's amazing.
Congrats.
But you know, I didn't write a book for people to go, oh, this is the perfect life. It's
Yeah.
not. So, and it's
Yeah.
about Max Sheffield. He heads to Michigan, of all
Oh, nice.
places, because that's where he grew up,
Yeah.
to be at his brother's house over the holidays, because his adult collegiate children, they don't want to be involved around that mess. So they're doing
Yeah.
their own thing. And then his brother and his wife and family, they leave for the holidays. And Max finds himself alone house sitting, essentially.
Uh-huh.
He also loses his voice early on in the book, from a tragic accident where he takes a log to the throat, helping his
Oh,
brother chop wood.
damn.
It happened to my brother, or Danny, in real life, and he got his voice back. It was just a
Oh,
deep
great.
contusion, so that's doctor's orders. He has to rest his voice.
Yeah.
What he does is he goes around town and observes the town folks and their eccentricities and the gossip and uh,
Yeah.
the dullness going on, or the drama that's
Yeah.
happening, and he sees how people, and I love this about a lot of Midwesterners, life can be hard and you live it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And life's not easy, and I love that sort of, no, put one foot in front of the other mentality when it comes
Yeah.
to living in. I think there's a lot of snow there right now, you know and so he what happens for this main character is he goes from the self-pity and resentment of the likely demise of his marriage to
Uh-huh.
seeing his own culpability and why it ended up at that spot
Yeah.
by observing these other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. It's a comedic book, right?
Well, it is. I hope that people get laughs from it, but there's some heartbreak in it. There's,
Oh no, it definitely
it's
sounds like that as well. Yeah.
yeah, there's it's I hope there's a lot of heart and vulnerability in it. Not just for the main character, but all the other characters, who are willing to open up maybe to someone else. And there's pain. But I'm hoping you're reading and turning the page and you're also laughing. So I hope it's a big mix, because that's just my style. It's what I like.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like a lot of fun, and yeah, I mean, I think all great comedy definitely has very strong dramatic elements as well.
Oh, it has to. It has to. It has to come from a real place.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think your investment will be there, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's during the right now, it's the pre-order phase of the book.
Yeah, yeah, so okay, so there are pre-orders. Where can we pre-order?
You can finishinglinepress.com
Okay.
is the press, that's the publisher who's going to publish the book.
Yeah.
And and there are a lot of authors there. They're really generous in giving authors their start, especially in the poetry world.
Uh-huh.
And so you can find my name there. You can also go to LarryJoeCampbell.com. That's
Okay.
my website.
Yeah.
And my son, he designed it. He put just a link right there, right away, that'll send you right to my page to pre-order the book.
Awesome. When is it set for
Yeah.
release?
It's set to release towards the end of March or just the beginning of April of
Okay.
2025. So
Yeah.
really excited. I'm actually doing shows where I'm
Yeah, I
doing
was going
some
to ask about
readings.
that.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
doing some readings, and I'm also doing some of my stand up. I try and mix it up. Improv. There's a lot of improv in the show. A lot of
Nice.
audience participation. It's
Nice.
really, it's really there to be a fun night for everybody involved. And I'm
Yeah.
doing shows throughout December. I'm actually coming to Michigan.
Yeah, I saw that
Um,
on the 30th.
I'm on the 27th. I'll be in Muskegon at the
Okay.
Frauenthal. And on the 29th, I'll be at the
29th.
Berman in Bloomfield Hills. Yeah.
Yes. I'll be there on the 29th.
Oh,
It's a lot closer
great.
to me. Yeah, I'm in
It's
Ann
going to
Arbor.
be a great time. My hope is around this holiday season that people leave the theater feeling better than they did walking in. And I hope they walked in at from a great place. But if they didn't, I'm hoping we send everyone off just with a big smile on their face.
Oh, I'm sure you will. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait to be there. I'm bringing some great people to those two shows. Jamie Moyer is from Bob's Burgers.
Uh-huh.
She does some voices there. Nancy Hayden, Rico Bruce Wade. Rico was a part of the original the cast that was there at Second City in Detroit when I got
Okay.
there. So
Nice, nice.
and so was Nancy, and they are just improv legends there.
Awesome. Sounds like a great time.
Oh yeah, it'll be a great night.
Yeah, so then just getting into the two questions I ask all my guests. What gives you optimism for the future of the film and television industry?
Yeah, wow. What gives me optimism? Stories have to be told. We're
Yeah.
always going to tell stories, and we're seeing some stuff come out with younger folks, and you watch it as an older person and go, "Oh no, that's very similar to a film I saw in 1981," right? Because now it's their experience
Yeah.
dating or falling in love or falling
Yeah.
out of love and
Hmm.
divorcing, where everyone has a story, and they're especially all the great stories revolve around family. And that could
Hmm.
be a workplace family, not just your immediate family
Yeah.
at home. It could be the Dirty Dozen was a family, a family of misfits brought
Hmm.
together to go on this mission. But we'll always want to tell stories about
Yeah.
the human spirit and about the relationship between one another. And so what gives me optimism is we're going to always need film and television as a medium of art
Yeah,
to
definitely.
convey that. I like it through books. I like it through an art gallery. I like to see it in music. I love music.
Oh
But
yeah.
we always need art to shine that mirror, to show the mirror, and to shine a light on what we're doing right now and how we're living as a group. Because people
Yeah.
can be pessimistic and say AI may take over this, or right.
Yeah.
um the budgets, that studios are becoming way more corporate and Wall Street like, and they're just streamlining everything in terms of what they'll pay. But you adapt to all
Hmm.
those things because we still need human beings connecting
Absolutely.
with other human beings.
Yes. Yes, I could not agree more, and I really love that. I love hearing that from someone with such a resume as yourself. That you've been around the block, and it's really great to hear that from you as well.
Well, I mean, otherwise it's just too it's too pessimistic, right? Otherwise, like,
Yeah.
oh, it's kind of hopeless. It's I've been in a hopeless spot before. And then
Yeah.
it's not that I ignore that hopeless spot. It's that you look at that hopeless spot and then you walk through it, right? And I think that's important. And then you learn a little something on the way. And I just want to remain hopeful when it comes to this industry.
Yeah, me too. And then lastly, your 5 favorite comedy movies of all time.
Mm-hmm. There's so many.
Oh
There's
yeah.
so many. We've talked about. You said Wedding Crashers is one of your all-time faves.
Yes.
It's certainly up there for me.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned something about Mary and Dumb and
Yep.
Dumber.
Yeah.
Um, but if I'm limited to 5,
Yeah.
and this is my current list because I
Okay.
could always put those and some other films in there.
Yeah.
I could go way back to some Charlie Chaplin stuff and
Yeah.
but current favorites. We always watch as a family around Thanksgiving. We always watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
It's a great one.
It'll always have a big place in my heart, an important place because I just love John Candy. He's one of my absolute favorites. He brings so much empathy and vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
to the roles that he played.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's on that L, and Steve Martin leaves him. And there's been recently they tell about how he's that was a much longer speech and the film was a lot longer and they condensed it, all that. I won't get into all that. But there's a point where John Candy gives a little wave into that L and then he turns and he looks out and it's just like, oh God, what am I going to do now? And I cry every time. He doesn't say a word. And
Mm-hmm.
I just well up every time he looks and what now? And we don't even know the whole story because Steve Martin comes back and plays. So Planes, Trains, Automobiles, I'll put it number 5. Okay.
Yep.
And then I'm going to put Old School at number 4.
Oh, it's so good. I love Todd Phillips.
Yeah, I love Old School because, and I put it there currently number 4. Anytime that comes on, I'm not
Yeah.
changing the channel.
Yeah.
And again, another Vince Vaughn's a giant in it, right?
Yep.
But Will Ferrell is so darn lovely in that movie.
Yeah.
When he runs that naked mile and then realizes his wife is right there. Oh, hi, honey. There's so many quotable lines in Old School that me and my sons constantly go back and forth and say
Yeah.
to one another. That's going to be my current 4.
It's a good one.
Okay. So that would leave that leaves 3. At 3, it's always got to be in my top 5. Number 3 is Tommy Boy.
Okay. Farley, yeah.
Again, I go back. It's so funny throughout the film. Fat guy in a little coat and him blowing up and trying to sell and all that stuff at the restaurant. Like there's so many funny moments in it. But him saying a little talking to his dad in the boat. Oh, just gets me. Every time it just gets me. And he's such a joy to watch. He is such a joy. Chris Farley was just such a joy.
Yeah.
And an inspiration for me. But so that would be 3. Now I'm going to get a little weird with the other 2.
All right, let's do it.
And number 2 for me is In Bruges.
Okay.
In Bruges is number 2 for me. The dialogue is so smart, witty, and real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a dark comedy, which I'm prone to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much pain at the heart of what's going on, right? For Colin Farrell's character,
Mm-hmm.
and the relationship, and then Ray Fiennes comes in at the end and to me he's hysterical. But it's very serious, I know, but there is so much comedy in that it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. So In Bruges will be number 2. and that leaves us at number one, and it's probably, well, Godfather and some others are my top up there.
Yeah.
Godfather probably, but
Fair
comedy
enough.
wise, I just
Yeah.
think it makes me laugh every time. It's gonna be different. It's Big Trouble in Little China.
I actually have not seen this one.
Okay. Uh, I thought everyone would enjoy it because it's one of those films that, like I was saying with my brother Gary growing up,
Yeah.
we threw on with the pizza and stuff,
Mhm.
Kurt Russell, and
Okay.
we quote it all the time. I've seen it probably 100 times.
Yeah.
I thought everyone would like it. When I was dating my wife Peggy, she was like, I can't stand this. So it's, but there are so many quotable lines, and the fact Kurt Russell is so good at playing this very serious John Wayne type of hero,
Mhm.
but he just keeps making mistakes, and that to me is such that I love that kind of comedy,
Oh yeah,
right?
me too. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you about an accident, and I don't want to hear act of God. He's just so serious in it.
Yeah.
Plus, I love the line at the end, and because it's really it's indicative of my own life. It's like, pretty soon I rub everyone the wrong way. Just, there are a lot of great lines in that. John Carpenter, I've always loved him as a director. Um,
Oh, okay. I didn't know he did comedy.
oh, Big Trouble in Little China. If you get a chance, there's some things that the effects in it and whatnot. Who knows
Yeah,
the
whatever.
kind of,
Yeah.
I think it was 87, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
I love it. And
Yeah,
again,
I'll
it's an
definitely check that one
adventure,
out.
really.
Yeah.
And they have to get rid of this demon. So it's, I just think, I think it's funny.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that one out. I appreciate the suggestion.
Plus, you didn't want titles that everyone else says, right?
Right, yeah. Fair enough, yeah. But yeah, no, that's been a lot of fun talking to you, Larry. I really appreciate you coming on. So yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you, Benjamin.